The first time Eliana looked in a mirror and no longer recognized her reflection, it was a Tuesday. The rain tapped against her window like an impatient memory. The street below bustled with people who looked alive, people with direction, while she sat in her tiny apartment gripping a cup of black coffee that had long since gone cold. She hadn't left her place in 3 days. The food delivery driver barely looked at her anymore. She didn't blame him. The version of herself she once was. The smiling girl with sunlit eyes and a voice full of spark had slowly eroded under the weight of a decision she could never take back. And shame, she learned, didn't shout. It whispered, "You're ruined. You had your chance. You don't deserve to pray." Her Bible sat on the bookshelf gathering dust, still marked at Psalm 51, a page she had once read while crying so hard she couldn't see the words. Back then, she believed redemption was still within reach. Back then, she hadn't yet let the wrong people in, hadn't yet made the choice that changed everything. It wasn't one decision. It was many, and yet, one stood out like a scar. She had walked into the clinic numb, and walked out hollow. No one held her hand. No one asked if she believed in God. No one told her she would still be loved afterward. She didn't tell anyone. Not her sister. Not her church friends. Not even God. Especially not God. Because shame teaches you how to hide. She worked as a graphic designer for a small firm downtown, but most days she just went through the motions. Her co-workers knew not to expect much from her. She used to be bright, ambitious. Now she just met deadlines and kept her headphones in. No one knew what she had done, but she always feared someone might find out. Shame does that. It convinces you that your past is a time bomb, and all it takes is one careless step for everything to blow up. That Tuesday, something in her finally cracked. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way the sky looked like it couldn't decide between storm or sunshine. Or maybe it was the letter. It had no return address. Just her name, handwritten, and a single sheet of paper folded neatly inside. It read, "You are not what happened to you. You are not what you chose. You are what I redeemed. Love, Jesus." Her hand trembled. Her breath caught. And for the first time in weeks, she cried without resisting it. Not the quiet, hidden kind, but the messy, red-faced, desperate kind. The kind that says, "I don't want to live like this anymore." She clutched the letter like a lifeline and whispered through tears, "Jesus, if you're still listening, I want to come back." That night, she didn't sleep much. She sat with the letter on her lap, staring at it, rereading it, wondering if someone sent it by mistake. But deep down, something told her it wasn't a mistake. It was a rescue. The next morning, she pulled out her old Bible. Pages stuck together, the spine worn. Notes scribbled in the margins by a younger, more hopeful Eliana. She read Psalm 34, verse 18. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Something stirred, not enough to erase the shame, but just enough to make her whisper again, "Please don't give up on me." She started going on long walks. No music, just her thoughts and the wind. One afternoon, she passed an old church with a sign that read, "Sunday's message, when God uses what broke you." She stopped mid-step. Coincidence? She walked on, but the words followed her. That Sunday, she showed up, hood pulled low, sunglasses on, sitting in the back like a ghost. She planned to leave before the last song, but the sermon pierced straight through her shame. The pastor said, "Some of you believe that your worst day defines you. But I need you to know Jesus can take what you're ashamed of and turn it into your ministry." Eliana froze. He didn't know her, but it felt like God did. When the service ended, she tried to sneak out, but an older woman touched her shoulder gently. "I don't know what brought you here today, sweetheart, but I'm glad you came. God's not finished with you." Eliana's voice cracked. "I don't know if I believe that yet." The woman smiled. "That's okay. Just keep showing up. He'll prove it." That night, Eliana wrote in a journal for the first time in years. She didn't try to sound spiritual. She just told the truth. "I feel broken. I don't trust myself. I'm afraid you'll reject me. But I miss you." She placed the journal beside her bed. Then, she opened her Bible again and prayed without knowing how. Jesus didn't speak audibly that night. No bichins, no lightning bolts. But the next morning, there was another letter in her mailbox. Same handwriting. I was there. The day you fell apart. I didn't look away. I stayed. She broke. She knelt right there by her door, in her pajamas, weeping into her hands. Something inside her shattered, but something deeper began to rebuild. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew this. The days she was most ashamed of, he had not abandoned her in them. And maybe, just maybe, he still had something beautiful to write with the pieces. The next few weeks didn't feel like transformation. They felt like survival. Eliana kept attending the little church on 5th and Bell, always in the back, always with her heart guarded, like a wound that hadn't scabbed over yet. She took notes during the sermons, even when they made her uncomfortable. Especially then. She didn't talk to many people, but the old woman with the soft hands and kind eyes, her name was Miriam, always found her, with a hug, with a smile, with a short reminder, Jesus loves you right now. Not once you clean up, not when you feel better. Now, those words echoed in her mind one Sunday night when she couldn't stop crying. No specific reason, just the kind of ache that sits in your chest when regret comes uninvited. She picked up her phone to call someone, anyone, but she had burned too many bridges. She had isolated herself too well. So she did something she hadn't done in years. She knelt beside her bed, and she prayed. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know how to undo what I did. But if you're real, if you're still here, I want to find you again. Silence. But this time it wasn't empty. It was still, as if heaven paused to listen. The next morning, Eliana was folding laundry when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I don't know why, but I woke up thinking about you. Just wanted to say, God still has a plan. She stared at the screen. It was from Rachel, an old friend from youth group she hadn't spoken to in 5 years. The one friend she never apologized to for disappearing. Eliana typed back slowly. I've missed you. I'm sorry for pushing you away. Can we talk sometime? A minute passed. Then the bubbles appeared. Yes, I've been praying you'd reach out. That week, they met for coffee. It was awkward, tender, honest. Eliana told her everything. Well, almost everything. Rachel didn't flinch. She didn't judge. She just held her hand across the table and said, You're not the only one who's fallen apart. But I'm here for the rebuild. Eliana walked home lighter. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel disgusting, or fake, or lost. She felt human. At church, she signed up to help with food distribution. Just once, she said, just to see. But when she saw the line of women and children waiting with tired eyes and worn clothes, something in her heart cracked open. A young mother dropped her food bags and began crying. Eliana bent to help her. She didn't say much, just handed her a tissue and picked up the apples. But the woman looked at her and whispered, Thank you. I thought no one saw me. And Eliana felt something sacred stir. Maybe this is what redemption looks like. Not erasing the past, but using it to soften your hands. She started journaling more. Not every day, but often. One entry read, I still feel ashamed. But now I believe shame doesn't scare you. I still hurt. But now I believe you're in the room when I cry. I still doubt. But now I believe you're patient with that, too. Then came the letter. It wasn't in the mailbox this time. It was on her windshield, in the rain. Even now, I'm writing your story. Your worst chapter is not the ending. You're just on page 74. Eliana laughed and cried in the same breath. One Sunday, the pastor opened a new series, From Shame to Glory. When Jesus writes the last chapter, Eliana froze in her seat. The message? John 8. The woman caught in adultery, dragged into the open, condemned, afraid. And Jesus? He kneels. He writes in the dirt. He doesn't deny her guilt. He just refuses to let it define her. Neither do I condemn you, he says. Go and sin no more. The pastor paused. Some of you have been reliving your worst day every single night. But Jesus didn't come to replay your past. He came to rewrite your future. Eliana's shoulders shook as she wept. After service, Miriam came and simply said, You look like someone who just let something heavy go. Eliana smiled through tears. Maybe I did. Miriam handed her a folded note. Not from her, but from someone who wanted it passed along. Eliana opened it later. Even ashes tell a story, and yours is becoming beautiful. That night, Eliana looked in the mirror again. Still tired. Still not the girl she once was. But not the same as the one who stared back weeks ago either. This one, she was coming back to life. Spring came slow that year, but Eliana didn't mind. The slowness matched her healing. She no longer cried every night, though some nights still stung. Her shame didn't rule her anymore, but it didn't vanish either. It whispered softer now, more like a memory than a monster. Most days she worked. Most evenings she read, journaled, or met Rachel for long talks and bad coffee. Sundays were different, her quiet space with God. But the real transformation happened somewhere in the ordinary. Like when she saw a mother yelling at her child in the grocery store, and instead of judging, she silently prayed. Or when she gave her seat to a man with a limp, and he simply nodded, eyes full of something too heavy to say out loud. Compassion was growing where shame once lived. One afternoon, she found an old thumb drive in her drawer. Out of curiosity, she plugged it in. Photos. Tons of them. Some with her ex-boyfriend. Some with her old friends from before the spiral. Some of her baptism day. She nearly deleted them. But she paused. Maybe the girl in the photos wasn't someone to erase. Maybe she was someone worth loving. Still, she made a folder and labeled it, "God's Not Done." The next day, her church hosted a women's conference. Eliana didn't want to go. She feared she'd feel out of place, like a fraud in a room of saints. But Rachel nudged her. So she went. The speaker was a woman named Danielle. Elegant, confident, powerful, and yet raw. She spoke about addiction, broken marriages, abortion, and shame so heavy she almost ended her life. Eliana stopped breathing. Danielle paused, eyes sweeping the room. There's someone here who thinks she's disqualified from purpose because of a decision she made on her darkest day. Let me tell you something. Jesus doesn't erase your past. He redeems it. The entire sanctuary fell silent. Eliana wept so hard she had to step outside. In the lobby, someone touched her shoulder. It was Danielle. "I felt you in there," she said gently. Eliana nodded through sobs. "It's like you knew my story." Danielle smiled. "No, honey, I just know his story. And in his story, shame is just the soil where glory blooms." That conversation would change everything. Danielle invited Eliana to join her support group. Women who had faced deep wounds and were learning to speak from healing, not hiding. Eliana hesitated, but she went, and what she found wasn't a room of victims. It was a room of warriors. One woman had survived abuse. Another had battled addiction. A third had buried her child. And yet, each one beamed when they spoke of Jesus. Not in the polished, rehearsed way, but in the "I've seen in my pit" kind of way. Eliana sat silent the first night, but the second time she spoke. "I thought I was unworthy because of what I did, but now I think I'm learning I was just broken. And Jesus doesn't throw away the broken." The room nodded. No judgment, just knowing. Weeks passed. The group kept meeting. One evening, Eliana read aloud a poem she wrote. "I was a shadow, hiding in light, smiling for safety, crumbling at night. But you, Jesus, you sat in my silence. Not to shame, but to stay." The women clapped and cried. It was the first time Eliana didn't feel like a mistake. She felt like a miracle in progress. That night, another letter came. This time, taped to her door. "You are not the version of yourself that fell apart. You are the daughter I'm lifting up. My glory will shine through your cracks." A few days later, her pastor emailed her. He had heard about her poem. Would she be willing to share it at the women's night next month? Panic surged. "No way," she whispered. But a louder voice whispered back, "Why not you?" She said yes. Scared, shaking, but yes. The night of the event, she stood on stage in front of over 100 women. Heart pounding, hands trembling. But when she looked out and saw the tears in their eyes, before she even spoke, she knew this wasn't about her. It was about the Jesus who met her in the aftermath. So she read. Her voice cracked, but it didn't break. And when she finished, the room stood in silence. Then applause. Then hugs. So many hugs. Women whispering, "That was my story too." Eliana walked home beneath a quiet sky, stars blinking gently. And for the first time in years, she said it out loud. "I'm not ashamed anymore." She didn't mean she was perfect. She just meant the shame had lost its power. The next few months unfolded like a sacred rhythm, one part healing, one part obedience. Eliana started volunteering more. Not because she felt obligated, but because she finally believed she had something to offer. Not perfection, not answers, but presence, real, messy, but healing presence. She helped organize prayer nights, helped cook for the single moms group, sat with teenagers who didn't trust adults, but somehow listened to her. Each yes she gave to serve became a seed planted in her own soul. The more she gave away, the more God seemed to multiply within her. But healing is never linear. One morning she woke up in a fog, the old weight of failure pressing on her chest again. She checked her phone, nothing triggering. Scrolled through social media, nothing unusual. But the shame crept in anyway, like smoke through a crack in the wall. You don't belong here. You're still that girl. You only feel better because people don't know the truth. She slammed her laptop shut, curled up on the couch, and let the tears come. That evening, she skipped church for the first time in weeks. Too tired, too ashamed of still feeling ashamed. But then her phone buzzed. A message from Miriam. "Don't let the old voice steal today's joy. You're not who you were. You're becoming." Eliana didn't respond. She didn't need to. She knew God had sent it. Later that night, she opened her journal. Instead of writing her usual reflection, she wrote a letter. Not to God, but from him. "My daughter, I knew your story from the start. I saw the worst day. I saw the lonely nights. I saw the silence after your cry. And I never left. I've never left. When the voices accuse you, remind them, I chose you. Not because you got it right, but because I love redeeming what the world calls too far gone. This is not your finish line. This is the beginning of glory." She read it 3 times, then whispered, "Amen." Weeks later, Eliana was asked to lead a breakout session at the next women's retreat. She laughed when they asked. "Me? Teach." She prayed about it, wrestled with it. Then she said yes. The theme of the retreat? Grace for the girl who almost gave up. Eliana stood before a circle of women, many of them older, some younger, and told her story. This time, no tears, just fire. I'm not proud of every page in my story, but I'm no longer afraid of them, because those pages are proof. Not of how bad I was, but how faithful he is. One woman approached her afterward, trembling. "I've never told anyone this, but I thought I was too dirty for church, too damaged to be loved by God. But your story, it's like God wrote it just for me to hear." Eliana hugged her tightly. "You're not alone, and you're not too far gone. I promise." Back home, Eliana began to dream again. Not just spiritual dreams, life dreams. She applied to go back to school part-time. She started a blog, just a small one, sharing reflections on healing, faith, and raw honesty. She titled it, "From Shame to Glory." Each week, more women wrote in. "I thought I was the only one. Thank you for not being fake. I haven't prayed in years, but today I did." The ripple effect was undeniable. Jesus wasn't just redeeming her. He was multiplying her healing into the lives of others. Then one evening, as she sat watching the sunset from her tiny balcony, a knock came at the door. It was Rachel, smiling like she had a secret. "You got a letter," she said, holding out a small envelope. "No return address." Eliana opened it. The same handwriting. "You never had to earn my love. I gave it before you even knew how to ask. I chose you. I still do." "Jesus," Eliana closed her eyes and whispered, "I believe you now." And this time, she really did. The next morning, she opened her Bible to Isaiah 61. Her eyes stopped at verse 3. "To bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair." She underlined it in bold and wrote next to it, "This is me." A year had passed. Eliana marked the day silently. No candles, no announcements, just quiet gratitude. 12 months ago, she was barely hanging on. Now, she was standing, not just standing, but testifying. Her scars weren't secrets anymore. They were stories. Her tears weren't signs of weakness. They were evidence of healing. And her shame? No longer a weight. Now a witness of Jesus' mercy. She didn't expect what came next. Her blog gained traction. Small at first, then steadily growing. She was invited to speak on a podcast, then a conference panel. One day, she received a message from a publisher. "We've been following your work. Have you ever thought of turning your journey into a book?" She stared at the screen. The girl who once wrote suicide notes, now being asked to write a book of hope. Only God, only glory. As she prayed over the offer, she revisited her old journals. She found a note scrawled across a tear-stained page. "I don't know how to survive this. But if you ever use it, God, let it help someone else." And now he was. She called her pastor, her counselor, even Rachel. They all said the same thing: do it. So she did. The title? You already know it. From Shame to Glory. Writing the book was hard. Reliving some chapters still hurt. But now there was purpose in the pain. There was light in the flashbacks. She wrote not to glorify what happened, but to glorify who showed up in spite of it. At the launch party, she stood with shaking hands and full eyes. So many faces. Miriam, Rachel, her pastor, the women from the group, even Danielle, the speaker who changed everything. And at the back of the room, her mother. They had reconnected a few months earlier. Small conversations, careful steps. Now, here she was, tears flowing as she watched her daughter shine. Eliana stepped up to the mic. "I used to believe my worst days disqualified me, but I've come to understand. They actually position me. Because Jesus doesn't waste anything. Not your pain, not your failure, not even your shame. He doesn't just redeem stories. He rewrites them entirely. If you're in your worst day right now, listen to me. This isn't the end. It's where glory begins." Applause broke out. But more than that, heaven smiled. Weeks later, she got another envelope. No return address. No signature. Just this: "You didn't find me in the light. You found me in the ashes. And I never left. Now go. Tell the others still sitting in theirs. I'm coming for them too." Eliana framed it. She placed it above her writing desk, so that every time she felt unworthy again, she'd remember Jesus didn't love her after she healed. He loved her into healing. And now, her scars weren't something to hide. They were proof. Proof that grace is real. Proof that mercy meets us in the mud. Proof that glory rises right out of shame.